I used to believe one thing without question. Family would never hurt me. That belief shaped my entire life. Every decision, every sacrifice, every excuse I made for people who didn't deserve it. I was the dependable one, the fixer, the he'll-handle-it child. And for a long time, I was proud of that. The role I never chose. I'm the oldest, not just by age, by responsibility. When our parents struggled financially, I worked part-time while studying. When my siblings needed help, I stepped in. When things went wrong, everyone looked at me. And I never said no, because saying no felt like betrayal. Funny how that works. The family narrative. From the outside, we looked solid. Sunday dinners, group chats, birthdays celebrated loudly, jokes about how tight our family was. People used to say, "You're lucky, not everyone has family like that." I believed them. I wanted to believe them. The slow erosion. It didn't start with something big. It never does. It started with small assumptions. Can you cover this? I'll pay you back. You're better with money anyway. It's just temporary. Temporary turned into routine. Routine turned into expectation. And expectation turned into entitlement. The unspoken agreement. Somewhere along the way, an agreement formed without my consent. I was the safety net. If something broke, I fixed it. If someone failed, I absorbed the impact. If there was a mess, I cleaned it up. And everyone slept better because of it. Except me. The warning signs I ignored. There were moments, flashes of discomfort. Like when decisions were made without me, but the consequences always landed on me. Or when money conversations stopped being requests and started sounding like instructions. Or when I noticed people thanking me less and expecting more. But I told myself, this is what family does. I didn't realize how dangerous that sentence was. The illusion of closeness. The irony. They still called me the favorite. The responsible one. The pride of the family. They praised me loudly. But appreciation without respect is manipulation in disguise. I just didn't see it yet. The moment everything shifted. The night it began, unraveling wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No fight. Just a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. And a truth I couldn't unlearn. The gathering. It was a family event, nothing special. Food on the table. Laughter too loud. That familiar warmth I always associated with home. I stepped outside to take a call. It was short. When I came back in, voices were lower. Hushed. And I caught my name. The sentence that changed everything. I didn't mean to listen. But then I heard it. Clear as day. He doesn't need to know. He'll handle it like always. Laughter followed. Soft, casual. Like they were talking about the weather. My stomach dropped. The realization. They weren't worried. They weren't nervous. They were comfortable. Comfortable assuming. Comfortable deciding. Comfortable using. And in that moment, something cracked. Not anger. Awareness. The silence afterward. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't storm out. I smiled. I sat down. I ate. But inside, a question repeated itself over and over. What exactly have I been handling without knowing? That night I didn't sleep. Because once you see the pattern, you start noticing everything. And I was about to discover just how deep it went. I didn't confront anyone the next day. Or the day after that. I went to work like nothing had happened. Answered messages. Laughed at jokes. played my role perfectly. But something had changed. The trust I once gave freely was gone, replaced by quiet observation. And when you stop assuming the best in people, you start noticing details you used to ignore. The itch you can't scratch. That sentence replayed in my head constantly. He doesn't need to know. He'll handle it like always. Handle what exactly? I tried to convince myself it was nothing serious. A misunderstanding. A poorly worded joke. But my body didn't believe that lie. I felt restless, distracted, hyper-aware, like someone who realizes too late that they've been living in a house with unlocked doors. The first thing I checked. I started with my bank account. Not because I suspected theft, that felt extreme, but because money had always been the thing everyone came to me for. Just this once. I'll pay you back next month. You're better off than the rest of us. I scrolled through transactions slowly. At first, nothing stood out. Groceries, bills, rent. Then I noticed it. A recurring payment. Small enough to blend in. Consistent enough to matter. Every month. Same amount. Same date. Same unfamiliar name. The charge I didn't recognize. I stared at it longer than I should have. It wasn't huge, that was the problem. It was the kind of amount you wouldn't question if you trusted the people around you. But I didn't remember approving it. Didn't remember discussing it. Didn't remember agreeing to anything like this. I checked previous months. It had been happening for almost a year. My chest tightened. The explanation I wanted to be true. I told myself there was a logical reason. Maybe I'd forgotten. Maybe it was something temporary that turned permanent. Maybe I'd agreed during a stressful time and never followed up. So I checked my messages. Family group chat. Private conversations. Old emails. Nothing. No mention. No acknowledgement. No thanks. It was as if this money had simply become theirs. The uncomfortable memory. That's when something clicked. A conversation from months ago, barely memorable at the time. A casual comment. We figured it'd be easier if it just came from you directly. I remembered nodding. Not fully understanding what they meant. Not asking questions. Because why would I? They were my family. The pattern reveals itself. I dug deeper. And deeper. And deeper. What I found wasn't one betrayal. It was a system. The silent dependencies. There were bills I didn't remember agreeing to cover. Subscriptions I never used. Payments routed through my account temporarily that never stopped. And each one came with a familiar justification. It's easier this way. You don't mind. You're already helping. I wasn't helping. I was funding. The worst part. They never asked. They assumed. They decided. They planned. And they counted on one thing. That I wouldn't question it. The family meeting I was never invited to. That realization hurt more than the money. It meant decisions were being made about my life without my presence. I wasn't a participant. I was a resource. And the people who knew me best knew exactly how to use that. The silence that followed. I didn't confront anyone yet. Because I needed to know. Was this everyone? Or was someone pulling the strings? So I kept quiet. And watched. The next clue. A few days later, I overheard another conversation. Different voices. Same tone. This time, I didn't miss a word. Just don't push him too hard. Yeah, we don't want him asking questions. That's when it hit me. They weren't just using me. They were managing me. The emotional shift. I didn't feel angry. I felt small. Like my generosity had been stripped of its meaning. Like every good thing I'd done had been reframed as obligation. And once generosity becomes obligation, love disappears. The decision forming. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. Lights off. Phone face down. And I asked myself a question I'd avoided my entire life. If I stop helping, who will still be here? The answer scared me. Because once you start pulling on a thread like that, you realize how much of the fabric depends on you not letting go. And I was about to find out exactly how replaceable I really was. I wish I could say I found out by digging deeper, by checking records, by following paper trails, by being smart and methodical. But the truth is worse. I found out because someone slipped up. The call I almost ignored. It was a number I didn't recognize. I was at work, in the middle of something tedious and forgettable, when my phone buzzed. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail. Something told me not to. I answered. Hello. There was a pause on the other end, papers rustling, a polite, rehearsed tone. Hi, is this my full legal name? That immediately put me on edge. Yes, I said carefully. I'm calling from a financial services office regarding a repayment schedule. My stomach dropped. The confusion. I think you have the wrong number, I said. Another pause. No, the voice replied. We're calling about the loan issued under your name approximately 8 months ago. 8 months. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I never took out a loan, I said slowly. Silence. Then quieter now, more cautious. Our records show otherwise. The details I couldn't explain. They read out information only I should have known. My name. My address. My identification details. Every box checked. Every form signed. Except I hadn't signed anything. At least not knowingly. The sinking realization. I asked how the loan had been accessed. They explained it plainly, no drama, no accusation. Someone had applied on my behalf. Digitally. Everything legitimate. I thanked them, ended the call, and just sat there staring at my desk. My hands were shaking. The memory that made it worse. I remembered it then. A day months ago when I'd been asked to help fill out some forms. Nothing official. Nothing urgent. Just a quick favor. You trust us, right? I had laughed. Said yes. The betrayal sharpens. They hadn't stolen my identity. That would have been easier to understand. They had borrowed my trust and used it against me. The scope of it all. The loan wasn't small. It wasn't catastrophic, but it wasn't nothing. Enough to tie me down. Enough to limit my options. Enough to keep me obligated. And suddenly, everything made sense. Why they didn't want me asking questions. Why the payments were easier this way. Why no one panicked. They weren't worried. They were protected. The family dynamic reframed. I saw every interaction differently now. Every compliment. Every joke about me being responsible. Every comment about how lucky they were to have me. It wasn't gratitude. It was reassurance. The confrontation I still avoided. I wanted to call them all. To shout. To demand answers. To hear them scramble for excuses. But I didn't. Because I knew something now that I hadn't before. If I confronted them too early, I'd only get their version of the truth. And I needed the whole picture. The deeper check. That night, I pulled every report I could. Credit, accounts, linked authorizations. What I found made my chest tighten again. The loan wasn't the only thing. The pattern repeats. Small authorizations, temporary access, emergency permissions that never expired. Nothing illegal, just unethical, just convenient, just hidden under the assumption that I wouldn't look too closely. The emotional collapse. I sat on my bed, staring at my laptop screen until the words blurred. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't family helping family. This was planned dependency. They had built their stability on my compliance. The quiet question. I asked myself something that night, something I'd never dared to consider. If they had needed to ruin me to survive, would they have hesitated? The answer felt obvious, and that scared me more than anything else. The calm before the storm. I slept poorly, woke up numb, and made a decision. Not to explode, not to confront, but to test them. Because if I was really just a resource, they wouldn't react well when the resource pulled back. The next step was simple. I stopped paying. Just one thing. One small thing. And waited. The day I said no and saw their real faces. I didn't announce it. I didn't send a message. I didn't warn anyone. I just stopped. One payment. One small transfer that had quietly left my account every month like clockwork. I let the date pass. And then I waited. The silence before impact. For the first 2 days, nothing happened. No calls. No texts. No passive-aggressive jokes in the family group chat. Part of me almost felt relieved. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they hadn't noticed. Maybe this really was something temporary that didn't matter. But deep down, I knew better. You don't build systems around money you don't need. Day 3. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. My sibling. I let it ring. A minute later, a text. Hey, everything okay? That was new. They never checked on me like that. The test continues. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I needed to see what would happen without my input. Another day passed. Then another call. This time from a different family member. Same tone. Same casual concern. Just wanted to make sure you're good. I wasn't fooled. Concern didn't come with urgency. And urgency was coming. The mask slips. By the end of the week, the messages changed. The warmth disappeared. The concern hardened into irritation. Did you forget something? The payment didn't go through. We need to talk. There it was. Not can we talk. We need to. The confrontation they initiated. I agreed to meet. Neutral location. Public. Controlled. I wanted witnesses, not because I expected yelling, but because I needed clarity. They arrived already tense. I could feel it. No small talk. No jokes. Straight to the point. The accusation disguised as confusion. So what happened? One of them asked. I shrugged. What do you mean? They exchanged glances. The money, another said, it didn't come through. I leaned back. Oh, that. The moment of truth. I asked a simple question. Can you explain to me why I'm paying for that? Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. Calculation. The excuses begin. Well, you know how things are. You make more than we do. It's not like it hurts you. We thought you understood. Each sentence felt rehearsed, like they'd practiced justifying it to themselves long before saying it to me. The line that ended everything. Then one of them said it. Casually, almost kindly. Your family, you don't just stop helping. That wasn't a request. That was a rule. The realization crystallizes. In that moment, I understood everything. They didn't see my generosity as a choice. They saw it as my role. And roles don't get opinions. The boundary. I spoke calmly. I didn't agree to this. I didn't approve the loan. And I'm not paying anymore. Their faces changed instantly. Not sadness. Not guilt. Fear. The manipulation escalates. They tried everything. Guilt. Anger. Reminders of the past. All we've done for you. You're abandoning us. How could you do this to family? I listened. And for the first time in my life, I didn't absorb it. The shift in power. When I stood up to leave, one of them said something I'll never forget. You're being selfish. I turned back and replied quietly. No, I'm being fair. And for them, those two things were the same. The aftermath. Within hours, the group chat exploded. Messages flying. Sides forming. Stories being rewritten. I wasn't surprised. When you stop being useful, people reveal how they really see you. The final confirmation. Later that night, I received a message. Short. Cold. If you do this, don't expect things to be the same. They were right. They wouldn't be. They'd be honest. That night, I realized something painful but freeing. I had never been loved for who I was. I was loved for what I provided. And now that I'd stopped, I was about to see how disposable I really was. They turned everyone against me. I should have seen it coming. The moment I said no, the story stopped being about money. It became about me. The silence that wasn't peaceful. For a few days after that meeting, everything went quiet. No calls. No texts. No arguments. At first, it felt like relief. But silence, I learned, is never empty. It's preparation. The first crack. It started subtly. A cousin I used to talk to regularly stopped replying. A friend canceled plans without explanation. A family group chat went strangely inactive, except when I wasn't around. Then I heard it. Not directly. Never directly. People are worried about you. That's how it was framed. Someone reached out, hesitant, careful. Hey, I don't know what's going on, but people are saying you're going through something. I asked what they meant. They hesitated. Then said, they said you've been acting strange, cold, that you're angry at everyone for no reason. I laughed at first. Then I realized how serious it was. The rewritten narrative. I wasn't the dependable one anymore. I was under a lot of stress, not thinking clearly, letting money change me. They made it sound compassionate, concerned, like they were protecting me from myself. The genius of it. They didn't call me selfish. They called me confused. They didn't accuse me. They diagnosed me. And that's far more dangerous. Because now, anything I said could be dismissed. The confrontation I didn't initiate. I was invited to another gathering. I almost didn't go. But I needed to see it. To know. The room felt different. Not hostile. Worse. Awkward. The looks. People avoided eye contact. Conversation stopped when I walked in. Smiles didn't reach eyes. I felt like I'd stepped into a version of reality where I was already guilty, and everyone knew it. Except me. The public pressure. Someone pulled me aside. Soft voice. Concerned expression. You know they're really hurt. I asked by what? They sighed. By the way you're handling things. Handling. That word again. The emotional ambush. Later someone else said it. Louder this time. Family shouldn't keep score. That hit hard. Because I hadn't kept score. They had. The moment I snapped quietly. I realized something then. They weren't upset about what I discovered. They were upset I'd noticed. And worse, that I'd stopped playing along. The private messages. That night, messages started coming in. Individually. Carefully. Each one slightly different. But all saying the same thing. Just apologize. This isn't worth it. Be the bigger person. Translation. Go back to how things were. The loneliness. I'd never felt more alone in a room full of people. The isolation wasn't accidental. It was engineered. Because when everyone believes the same story about you, you start questioning yourself. The doubt creeps in. I'll admit it. I wondered if I was wrong. If I should have handled it differently. If maybe I was overreacting. That's the power of collective pressure. The message that broke the spell. Then I received a message from someone unexpected. A family member who rarely spoke up. Short. Blunt. I saw the documents. You're not crazy. My hands trembled. They knew. Someone else knew. The truth surfaces. They told me everything. Who suggested it? Who approved it? Who benefited the most? And who had insisted I'd never find out? The betrayal had names now. Faces. Intent. The final realization. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a coordinated effort. And I wasn't just a victim. I was the foundation. That night, I stopped trying to defend myself. Because I finally understood. When people turn others against you, it's usually because the truth would turn everyone against them. And I was done protecting their version of events. The document they didn't think I'd see. I didn't go looking for revenge. I didn't want exposure. I didn't want apologies. I didn't even want explanations anymore. I just wanted to understand how far it went. Because by then, I knew something most of them didn't realize yet. People who manipulate quietly always leave paperwork behind. The envelope. It arrived without warning. No return address. Just my name handwritten, slightly shaky. At first, I thought it was junk mail. Something about the weight made me stop. Inside was a single manila folder. Old. Worn. Handled too many times for something that was supposed to stay hidden. The first pay. The moment I saw my name at the top, my chest tightened. Not printed. Typed. Professionally. This wasn't casual. This wasn't accidental. This was planned. What it was a financial agreement. Not legally binding in the way a bank contract is, but binding enough to reveal intent. A breakdown of contributions, timelines, expected outcomes, and at the center of it all, me, the language that gave it away. I didn't need to read every word to understand it. Phrases jumped out immediately. Primary contributor. Reliable income source. Low risk of refusal. Low risk of refusal. That's how they described me. Not by name. By behavior. The betrayal hits deeper. What destroyed me wasn't the money. It was the tone. Cold. strategic, assured. They weren't hopping I'd help. They were counting on it. The timeline. The date stretched back years. Before the loan. Before the payments. Before I'd even noticed the shift in how they spoke to me. This wasn't something that spiraled. It was something that started small and intentional. The missing signatures. Here's the part they didn't think through. The document wasn't signed by me, but it was signed by them. Multiple signatures, multiple witnesses, and one note scribbled at the bottom that made my stomach drop. He doesn't need to be involved directly. The confirmation. Everything I'd suspected. Everything I'd feared. Everything they'd denied. Was right there. In black and white. The person who sent it. I knew immediately who it had to be. The quiet one. The observer. The person who never fully participated. They didn't add a letter. Didn't explain. They didn't need to. This wasn't an act of kindness. It was an act of conscience. The choice. I sat with that folder for hours. There were 100 things I could do. Expose them. Confront them publicly. Take legal action. Burn everything down. And for a moment, I wanted to. The truth about power. But then I realized something important. They were already afraid. That's why they'd controlled the narrative. That's why they'd isolated me. That's why they'd never wanted me asking questions. The document was never meant to leave that room. The final boundary. I didn't send messages. I didn't argue. I didn't warn them. I did something much simpler. I stopped everything. All payments. All access. All favors. All communication. Complete silence. The reaction. It didn't take long. Calls. Messages. Voicemails. The tone was different now. Less confident. More urgent. Almost panicked. They knew. Someone had talked. And they didn't know who. The moment of clarity. That night, I understood something I wish I'd known years earlier. People do betray you all at once. They test how much they can take. And stop just short of where you'd push back. Until you do. I thought cutting them off would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that walking away didn't end the story. It just shifted it. Because when you remove yourself from a system built on you, it collapses. And collapse makes people desperate. I thought silence would bring peace. That once I cut the cord, everything would finally stop. I was wrong. Silence doesn't end systems like that. It exposes them. At first, nothing happened publicly. No dramatic posts. No angry confrontations. No apologies. Just tension. I could feel it through other people. Through awkward messages. Through conversations that stopped short. They were scrambling. And for the first time in years, they were doing it without me. It took less than a month for things to unravel. Bills went unpaid. Deadlines were missed. Plans that relied on my support suddenly stalled. People started asking questions. Not about me. About them. The story changes again. The narrative shifted. I was confused anymore. I was cold. Unreachable. Heartless. They stopped pretending they were worried about me. Now they were angry. Because anger feels better than accountability. The message I didn't expect. One night I received a long message. Not an apology. Not a threat. A confession. They admitted things were harder than expected. That they didn't think it would affect everything this much. That they never meant for it to go this far. That sentence stayed with me. They never meant for it to go this far. As if the damage had happened accidentally. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have replied. I could have explained. Corrected lies. Shared the document. Cleared my name. And for a moment, I wanted to. Not for them. For myself. The truth I had to accept. But then I realized something painful. They didn't want clarity. They wanted relief. They wanted me back in my role. Quiet, dependable, absorbing the weight. And responding would have been an invitation. So I didn't reply. I archived the message. And that was it. No closure. No reconciliation. No dramatic final conversation. Just distance. Months later, I heard pieces of what happened next. Not directly. Never directly. A project fell apart. A relationship fractured. Someone moved. Someone stopped talking to someone else. The system they'd built, the one that depended on me not noticing, couldn't survive without its foundation. And they never admitted why. The hardest truth. Here's the part people don't talk about. Walking away didn't make me feel powerful. It made me feel empty. Because when your entire identity is built around being needed, being unnecessary feels like loss. Even when it's freedom. The question that still lingers. Sometimes late at night, I replay it all. Not the betrayal. The moment before. Before I overheard the conversation. Before I checked the accounts. Before I asked the wrong questions. And I wonder, did they ever see me as family? Or was I always just the safest option? I used to think betrayal required cruelty. Now I know it often looks like comfort. Familiarity. Routine. People don't always hurt you because they hate you. Sometimes they hurt you because they trust you won't leave. I didn't lose my family that day. I lost an illusion. And in exchange, I gained something quieter and harder. Self-respect. I don't know if they regret it. I don't know if they learned anything. I don't know what story they tell about me now. What I do know is this. They still needed me. I just stopped being available. And some nights, I wonder which of us that hurts more. Please subscribe for more realistic stories.